everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So today we have a special guest on the channel, and this is John Pidgeon from the My Millennial Money Property Podcast. So I asked you guys on the community wall and also in Discord what questions you guys would like to ask him. So you came back with a heap of questions, so hopefully we can get through them all today. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Queenie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the channel. And before we get into the questions, we have a little game, and basically you will have to reorder these properties in terms of, I guess, most expensive to least expensive.
Nothing like being put on the spot from the start, is there?
In this game, John will have 3 properties in front of him. These properties are valued at 1.9 million, 2.1 million and 3.3 million. He will have to reorder the properties in the right order.
So, North Sydney 5-bedroom, 3-bedroom house in Balmain, and semi-detached in Cronulla. So I would go... doesn't say the size in Balmain, so I'm going to have to go for North Sydney, Balmain, Cronulla.
You got this one right. So North Sydney is the most expensive,
right? But
actually Cronulla was more expensive than Balmain.
Wow,
which
for
is
a
super
semi-detached in Cronulla.
Yeah, you know, that shocked me as well, because I've been looking for an investment property, and I was thinking maybe in the Shire. You know, I actually went to school there, and it's very expensive there.
Especially when Balmain's got water views by the looks.
Yeah, so interesting.
Anyway.
So
there you go. No one's perfect, are they?
No, I mean it's just a fun game, but you got the first one right.
Cool.
So yeah. Okay, so can you tell us a bit about how you got into property investing and what you currently do?
Sure. Look, it started for me 20 years ago. I come out of university and realised that I wanted to, I suppose, create some passive income. And for me, it was property or shares, one or the other. And I think it still is today generally. People choose one or the other as a major focus. And I just saw the leveraging of component of property. I put in 10% deposit and borrow 90% from the banks, for example. So I just able to leverage your money into a greater asset and see that asset appreciate was the winner for me. And the simple concept that people need property to live in, to either rent or to own themselves. And the great Aussie dream, perceivably, is buy your own home and live in it. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me that property was the target. So as soon as I came out of university, I bought a house where I first got my job. It was what they call rent vesting today. So I basically rent vested for 15 years and grew my portfolio that way. So no emotion attached to the houses I bought, just purely investment focused. So that was really how the journey started out. Back then it was really just a case of talking to as many people as you could. CDs and cassette tapes, would you believe, were a thing, and just consuming a heap of information through books.
Wow. And now it's podcast. Your podcast.
Yeah, well, the last 10 years I've been fortunate enough to be able to coach people to do the same thing, whether that be to buy their own home and invest, or just purely invest and rent vest, I suppose. So yeah, we teach them from all walks of life, all ages. We obviously talk about the concepts of cash flow management and goal and habit setting, but more detail, we teach them how to do it on their own, or we have a buyer's agent arm that helps them do it for them, I suppose. So yeah, and lucky enough again to be part of the podcast that we do on the last couple of years, and yeah, it's great to be able to talk about something you're passionate about for a living, I suppose.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I feel the same way about the YouTube channel. Being able to share that passion with other people and help people build wealth is so exciting.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like work, does it?
It doesn't, no. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned that you were thinking kind of property or shares. Can you tell us why you think that property is a good investment?
Very biased opinion, of course, Queenie, but look, I think for what I mentioned, to be able to leverage so high into property, the banks obviously think it's a good idea, because otherwise they wouldn't lend up to 90% of its value, or in some cases 95% of its value. So and the fact that everyone needs one. Not everyone needs shares. Not everyone needs gold, for example. So that was just the black and white logic that I formed years ago. And I suppose when I saw some early results, not dissimilar to your story that you told me off air, you see some good results and you think, well, yeah, this thing can work. I've just maybe got to sharpen the tools a little bit to make better decisions to make it work even better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. I haven't really thought about it like that, but yeah, I guess you don't really need to own shares, but you do need to have somewhere to live. So that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it safeguards you on the flip side. So if everything turns pear-shaped, generally speaking, people still need to live somewhere. Whereas you do see the share market more volatile, I suppose, in its values over time.
That's true. That's very true. Something to consider for sure.
Absolutely.
So we spoke a bit about obviously your journey with property, and you told us why you personally like property as an investment. Can you tell us maybe some tips that for first home buyers out there that you would recommend?
Absolutely. I think learning from my mistakes, if I had my time again, I'd definitely be more diligent with my savings. And I speak to so many 20-something-year-olds that are killing it in that space. Their cash flow management plan is SMIC, and they're maximising that as well as enjoying their life. But I think I went too far the other way and enjoyed life too much. So it's an easy win to be able to save more than you think you can. That's the first one. And then secondly, just maybe thinking outside the box as to how I can get into my first property. I was fortunate enough that I was in a country region and it was quite affordable. Like my first property cost 60 grand. Still not that today, but the method was, well, where can I get into an affordable property in my price point at that point in time? That maybe doesn't mean Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane as the three largest cities in Australia, or if you're international, think the same thing. Where is my price point if it's not those three? That would be my biggest tip for someone.
For sure. I think, a lot of people, they think, oh, when I buy a property, I need to live in it and it has to be, have X, Y, Z, and then you realize, oh, it's actually very expensive.
Yeah, and for those that live in Sydney, they would know this, but the boom of Sydney was 2013 to 2017. Now, people wanted to get themselves a 20% deposit, so they kept saving and didn't buy into the market in that time, and the market actually crept ahead and they kept falling further behind. So to the point where they didn't actually take advantage of that growth period, whereas they could have got in sooner if they had have lowered their ceiling on price and maybe looked at some different finance structuring options.
For sure. I actually didn't know that there are so many schemes available for first home buyers, like the First Home Buyer Super Scheme, and then there's also you can have less than a 20% deposit.
So low deposit scheme is pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wish I knew these things last year when I was buying my first home. So if you guys are watching and you're looking to buy a first home, definitely look at those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't around when I first started either, so it's all a bonus. But yeah, it doesn't mean you take advantage of it to buy in a market just simply because of those schemes. The stars have got to align, don't they?
For sure. And okay, so that is super interesting. I love hearing your perspective on property. And what are your thoughts? Obviously, it's a very strange time that we're living in, and a lot of people are saying that potentially there could be a property crash. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I'm not Nostradamus, but I think at the start of COVID, I did some videos on what I thought was going to happen, and in respect to the government stimulus and how much they were going to pump into property or to the economy in general, and keeping an eye on unemployment rates and things like that. So I thought that property was going to be pretty secure through that period. A lot of the unemployment is the 18 to 24-year-olds, which don't have a lot of exposure to property at that stage. So I never thought that property was going to dip or have blood on the streets, as some people might want to predict as doomsdayers. And I don't think that will happen either. if it was an ugly duckling before COVID, I think it's still an ugly duckling. But good solid property in good solid locations, I think, continue to perform. And we're actually seeing post-COVID, or what I'm calling post-COVID at the moment, is housing is doing better than it has done the last 2 years.
Interesting. That's really interesting to hear your perspective on it. And okay, so you mentioned about like suburbs and like getting good looking properties. What suburbs or I guess areas do you think are poised for growth? Sorry.
Hot spots. Yeah, well, there you go. So I think pre-framing by saying there's a housing market or markets around the country, and then there's unit and apartment markets, and they're very different beasts at the moment, and they have been for the last 100 years. So continuing to monitor them separately is the first thing I would be doing. At the moment, it's very much a housing market, not so much a unit apartment market. In regards to location, I would be putting my energy and focus on locations that are maybe 1 to 2 hours from the majors of Sydney, Melbourne, and to some respects Brisbane. I just feel there's some good value in buying there, sort of that 400 to 600k range, which is affordable. And in Sydney and Melbourne, that's not affordable, that price point. And the ability post-COVID of people being able to work from home now, not having to head into the office 5 days a week, they might go 1 or 2 times a week instead. So that gives the ability for someone to live basically anywhere, but still be within earshot of an airport or a capital city.
Oh, yeah. I think that, I think, the whole work from home revolution, it's just completely changed people's perspectives on property, because I don't know about you, but obviously I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm glad it's actually quite big and spacious, but if I was living in that 1-bedroom apartment that I had before, it was like, it was so small, and the only reason I lived there was to be close to the city. And now that you don't need to commute as much to the city,
Correct.
People are thinking like, why am I living in a shoebox?
Totally.
Like,
Yeah. You can't swing a cat.
Yeah, exactly. Very interesting points. And what are your thoughts on, I guess, the next couple of years when it comes to property investing? Do you have any, tips that you'd like to share with us? Do you think that now is a good time to buy?
Yeah, I was always taught many years ago there's the next best time to buy property is now, provided that it works for you at the time. You've got your strategy in order, and then secondly, you've got your finance structures organised. So you've got your deposits through cash or equity, or you've got your borrowing capacity and the ability for banks to lend you money. So if those two are sitting there now, I don't think there's any reason to hold off. Those that are sitting there waiting for a drop in the market or blood on the streets, you might be waiting a long time, would be my thoughts on that. Yeah,
for sure. I think so. The housing market is actually a lot more resilient than I thought it was, so very interesting. Do you have any final, pieces of advice that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Look, I think hats off to you firstly if you're watching, because it means you want to continue to educate yourself, and that's the biggest thing is taking control of your own future through your own knowledge and education. It's something that someone can't take from you. So not having to outsource it is a big thing, I believe. So continue to read, continue to listen, and take as much information in as you can from people that have done it before you would be my biggest recommendation. And then secondly, you don't want to be the smartest person in the library. So you can do all the research you want, but if you don't actually take action, then it means nothing. So you've just got to get out there, bite the bullet and take action. Rightly or wrongly, you'll learn from your success or learn from your mistakes, which will put you in good stead for the future. A lot of our listeners are maybe, 20s, early 30s. I looked at the rich list today, top 200 in the Financial Review, and the average age in there is 66. So that's 40 years that someone in their mid-20s has got to make a difference, and then some after that. So don't rush it, take your time with it, clue yourself with knowledge and take action.
Some really, really great takeaways and pieces of advice. Thank you so much for sharing. I completely agree. life is just, it's life. We should always be trying to develop and improve and learn more from smart people that have done it before, like you said. And on that note, I'll put a link down in the description below so you can check out John's podcast. It's amazing. He has so many great tips to share with first home buyers and also property investors. So make sure you check it out. Thank you so much for coming on the channel. You have a wealth of knowledge about property and I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me on, Queenie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, see ya.
Bye.